pleasure being here with my fellow Senator Cory Booker. And let me thank Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter for her wonderful words, and let me thank the NAACP for inviting me, and especially for making me feel at home with this freezing weather, just like Vermont. Appreciate it. We are here today not just to remember, not just to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are here today to understand that King had a revolutionary spirit. Yes, he was a revolutionary. And we are going to stand with him on taking on the political and economic establishment and creating a government that works for all of us, not just for the few. Now, Dr. King had many enormous accomplishments, Voting Rights Act, many other accomplishments. But he also was a man not only of accomplishment, but of extraordinary courage. I want to take you back to 1967. King had won the Pulitzer Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. King was honored all over the world. Yet King looked out at that country, and he looked out at the war in Vietnam. And people said to him, Dr. King, you're a civil rights leader. Why are you going to talk about the war in Vietnam? And with enormous courage, King said, how can I preach nonviolence when our country is involved in a brutal war? How can I speak for the poor when we're spending billions of dollars bombing that country? And King spoke up, and you know what happened? Editorial writer after editorial writer criticized him. Many of his liberal friends deserted him, and the President of the United States turned on him. But what he reminded us is courage of conscience, that we stand up no matter what the odds and take on the power to fight for economic justice, to fight for social justice, to fight for racial justice, to fight for environmental justice. Today we talk about justice, and today we talk about racism. And I must tell you, it gives me no pleasure to tell you that we now have a President of the United States who is a racist. We have a President of the United States who has done something that no other president in modern history has done. What a president is supposed to do is to bring us together. And we have a president intentionally, purposely, is trying to divide us up by the color of our skin, by our gender, by the country we came from, by our religion. Now everybody here knows that from the first days when the settlers came to this country and the terrible things they did to the Native Americans, everybody knows about the abomination of slavery and segregation. We know about the discrimination against Catholics and Jews and Muslims and Irish and Italian. So we say to President Trump today, this country has suffered too long from discrimination. We are not going backwards. We are going forward to a non-discriminatory society. But racism, as you have heard from other speakers, exists in this country today, and it exists when the median white family owns 10 times more wealth than the median African American family. Racial equality must be central to combating economic equality if we are going to create a government that works for all of us and not just the 1%. Racism is alive when the United States Supreme Court and Republican governors make it harder for people of color to vote and when they suppress the vote. And that is why I believe we need a constitutional amendment to guarantee every American the right to vote, and that we enact automatic voter registration. If you are 18 years of age, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Latino, you are registered to vote. End of discussion. Racism is alive and well when we have a broken criminal justice system and we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We need in this country real criminal justice reform, and that means we need jobs and education for our young people, not more jails and incarceration. It means ending the cash bail system, which puts people in jail for the crime of being poor. Hundreds of thousands of people rotting in jail because they're poor and can't afford bail. It means ending the so-called war on drugs, which has caused so much pain and destruction in this country. It means ending private prisons. In America, you should not be making billions in profit by locking up and incarcerating your fellow Americans. It means, when we talk about criminal justice reform, understanding that we need police reform and that lethal force is the last resort, not the first. Racism exists in our country when we have massive levels of health care disparity. When the infant mortality rates in the black community is more than double what it is in the white community, and death rates from cancer and almost every other disease is far higher for blacks than whites. In my view, not only do we have to expand primary health care throughout this country, and Congressman Clyburn and I have worked on it and are working on it now. We're going to have more community health centers in Vermont and South Carolina. But more importantly, in America, we have got to do what every other industrialized country does: guarantee health care to all as a right through a Medicare for all single-payer program. Racism is there when gentrification pushes out black renters, black homeowners, and black business owners from communities where their families have lived for decades. Racism is here when the United States of America has shamefully the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth, and 34% of black kids live in poverty. Racism is here when black schools are overcrowded, inadequately funded, and staffed with less experienced teachers, and when the African American young people dropout rate is much too high. In my view, we have got to understand that education is a human right, and that in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we should be providing quality health care to every child. And when we talk about education, which is the theme of today, we all know that the most important years of a child's life, of a human being's life, is 0 through 4. And that is why we need universal, affordable child care. When we talk about education, we understand that today a college degree is equivalent to what a high school degree was 50 years ago. It is not a radical idea to say that in a country which spends $700 billion a year on the military, which gives $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and large corporations, it is not a radical idea to say that we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free, and that we're going to lower student debt for the millions of people, and that we are going to adequately fund the historically black colleges and universities in this country. Now, in 1963, a few years ago, when I was a college student, I had the honor of being in Washington, D.C. to hear Dr. King's speech, the I Have a Dream speech. And along with hundreds of thousands of other Americans who were there that day, we were there to demand an end to racism and to support Dr. King's call for economic justice. Because let us never forget that the title of that march was Jobs and Freedom. Jobs and freedom. And I find it remarkable that 56 years after that march, many of the demands that Dr. King and others made are still demands that we have got to fight for today. Back in 1963, Dr. King demanded that workers be paid a living wage. Today, we have got to fulfill that demand and raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. During that march, Dr. King and other organizers demanded adequate and integrated education. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Our children deserve the best public education system in the world. During that march, Dr. King and others demanded decent and affordable housing. And yet in Vermont and in South Carolina and all over this country, working people are paying 40, 50% of their limited incomes for housing. Instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, let's put our people to work building affordable housing. Instead of building a wall with Mexico, let us build the housing our people need. During that march, think about it, back in 1963, Dr. King and other organizers demanded a federal jobs program in order to make sure that everybody in America who wanted to work could get a job. And that is a dream we must fulfill. Think about all of the work that has to be done in providing health care to all, into transforming our economy so that we combat climate change. Think about all the jobs out there that we need to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Let us fulfill the demand that King made back in 1963. and say that in America, if you want to work, we have a meaningful, well-paying job there for you. Brothers and sisters, Dr. King, in my view, was one of the great leaders, not only in American history, but in modern world history. He was a man of unbelievable courage, who understood not only that we have got to end racism, but that we need economic justice. Remember where he was when he died. He was in Memphis, Tennessee, standing with exploited sanitation workers who were struggling for decent wages. Think of the work he was doing at the end of his life. What he was organizing was a poor people's march. Remember that? And what he said is, we are going to bring together black workers and Latino workers and white workers and Native American workers. And we are going to change the national priorities of this country, so that in this country, justice rings out for all, that every American, regardless of the color of his skin, regardless of whether he or she is rich or poor, can have the quality of life that all human beings deserve. So today we are here not just to remember Dr. King, not just to honor Dr. King. We are here to feel his revolutionary spirit, to have the courage to take on the economic and political establishment, and to create the kind of nation we know we can become. Thank you all very much.